Hello everyone, and welcome to part 2 of building a PC. In this video, we will be focusing on the CPU and how to install it. One thing I want to mention is that this build won't be a super high-tech gaming PC or anything. You'll see some of the parts are kind of older, some of them are quite newer, but in general, it's just going to be a normal PC, perfect for work and light gaming. With that out of the way, let's get started. So this is a CPU. A CPU, or a central processing unit, is kind of like the brains of the PC. It performs thousands of calculations to process and execute instructions for all the other components. It's the core of the computer. It sits on the CPU socket on the motherboard, and every motherboard has a CPU socket. However, motherboards only support a specific type of CPU, whether that be AMD or Intel. So make sure that when you buy your CPU, it is compatible with your motherboard, and you can check the motherboard box to make sure. Every CPU has a certain number of cores for processing data. The more cores, the better. There are also virtual cores, which allow for multi-threaded CPUs for faster processing. So here I have the AMD FX 8120. With 8 cores and 8 threads, this will be good enough to run most games and perform tasks with minimal effort. So first, take a look at the motherboard's CPU socket, and you'll see that there is a little retention arm on the side. You need to raise that arm up so that the CPU can fit into the holes. Now pick up the CPU by its sides. It's always good practice to hold any computer part by the sides to not damage anything, but especially with the CPU because there's hundreds of these pins at the back. You really don't want to bend any of these pins because they're very difficult to fix after that. So hold the CPU face up and look for a little golden triangle. You'll see that on the CPU socket on the motherboard, one of the corners also has a tiny triangle. This is because the CPU only goes in one way, so orient the CPU so that the triangle matches up with the triangle on the motherboard. Once it is oriented correctly, carefully lower it into place and let it fall into the socket. Make sure it fits well, but careful not to apply any pressure to the top. You don't need to push down after it has fallen into place. Gravity will do the job for you. Finally, lower the retention arm and push down and to the side to lock the CPU in place. Congratulations! You just installed your very own CPU. Easy, right? But we aren't quite done yet. As well as this, you also need a cooler for your CPU. There are different types of cooling methods such as liquid cooling or AIOs all-in-ones. But today I'll just be using the stock cooler, which usually comes with the CPU itself. Unless you have a really high-end system, you won't need the extra cooling, and this will be plenty. It has a fan and a heatsink to dissipate the heat that the CPU produces. To install this, you first have to apply thermal paste to your CPU. This is important to transfer the heat from the CPU to the CPU cooler. Without it, your CPU could overheat and lead to many problems with your computer. There are a bunch of different methods to doing this, but today I'm going to be using the pentadot method. So what you want to do is apply a small amount of thermal paste to the middle and 4 corners of the CPU, and then take the cooler and gently press it down into position. For some coolers, you will need to screw them down, but for this one, all we need to do is attach the latches on each side like so, and turn the lever arm to lock it into place. Finally, you will need to plug in the CPU fan into the port on the motherboard like so. And boom! You have now successfully installed your CPU and CPU cooler. Great job!